Welcome back to 101 East. One-year-old Li Shaman became ill after drinking Sanlu milk formula. She's now recovering from 2 kidney stones in a Beijing hospital. But it's her aunt that's watching over her because her parents can't afford to take off time from their jobs far away in Henan province. Here's her story, told by her mother, Liu Xiao.
My daughter was born in November last year, and from the beginning we fed her Sanlu brand milk formula. When she was 2 months old, I noticed there were orange things in her urine. At that time we went to the hospital for a checkup, but the results showed nothing was wrong with her. But for months she was always in pain. Finally, last summer, my sister took her to the hospital in Beijing. There we heard the reports about problems with Sanlu milk. The doctors told us my baby had kidney stones. My daughter stayed in the hospital there for over a month. She was so sick that she needed an injection every day. But her blood vessels are so small and she would cry so loudly. It took 3 adults to hold her to give her the injection. I really hope this condition won't cause any permanent damage to my daughter's health. I'm very angry. I trusted Chinese-made products. Before my baby was born, I felt that some imported brands were not reliable, so I wanted Chinese brands. I didn't ever think this would happen. We will sue Sanlu. I'm not looking for too much. No amount of money can compensate us for the mental torture we've endured. I just want to let them know that they shouldn't do this. It is like murder. The children they hurt are so young and they can't speak for themselves.
Well, joining me for further discussion in Beijing, Zhang Bo of Tsinghua University, in Hong Kong, journalist and author Alexandra Hani, and here in KL, Professor Joseph Cheng at the City University of Hong Kong. Joseph Cheng, as Zhang Bo mentioned before the break, the latest Irish pork scandal does demonstrate that food problems are not confined to China.
I do agree with our guests in Beijing that this is a worldwide problem. Even countries such as Japan recently had similar cases of food poisoning. But in China, this is a much more serious issue. We just heard what was said from the video.
Why is it more serious?
The mother said is murder. And because in China, there is a case of there is an economic case. People are concerned with the image of China's exports, and in some cases, it's more than just export earnings, like the poisonous dumplings case in Japan. It was a very serious diplomatic issue. It was an issue brought up at the top leadership levels, and it caused concern about China's image in the eyes of the Japanese public.
But the problem here, Alexandra Hani, is that at the end of the day, these events and the driving factor behind these events the world over are exactly the same. Is China being held to too great an account compared to other countries that have similar problems?
No, I think that China is being held to account for the kinds of issues it has in its supply chain, and we can see it very clearly that what happens in China no longer stays in China. So what people are asking in China and outside China is simply that we can trust the goods that we buy from China. And I think for the Chinese government, this is as much a political issue as it is an economic issue.
Well, Alexandra Hani, where is this failure of trust most evident, and what does it originate from?
Well, I mean, we've had a succession of scandals. The first baby milk scandal in China in recent memory was back in 2004. So these are not new issues, and we've had a series of product safety scandals, not contained just to food, but remember with toothpaste and cough syrup, in tires and toys. It's just a really long list. And so what happens is there's a breakdown in trust between the consumer and the places where they shop, as well as the brands they buy from. So ultimately, this is an issue that not only the Chinese government, but also the companies and the importers and the retailers have to address.
Zhang Bo, Professor Cheng has told us that there's a moral failing in China that's behind this, as well as a failure of the governmental system because of its corruption. Do you agree with that, and what do you think should be done?
I want to quote a word from the mother in the video that is, "I'm angry." Because I think as Chinese people, we're all angry about all these producers have done. But I think I also agree with Alexandra, this is an economic issue, because I think the companies and the industries will learn that they need to pay attention to their quality. And if the quality is good, they can earn a premium, just as the foreign exporter of dairy product who are exporting their dairy products into China. Chinese people are now having a very eager will to buy their products. So I think this is a lesson both for the government and for the companies, because if they learn that they need to pay attention to the quality issue, then it will definitely be a very serious on the agenda.
Certainly the free market will provide incentives for some companies to make a profit as a consequence of this, but is there not a very strong role here for government that it needs to really act upon?
I think the government is already playing a very important role. And just as I mentioned before, that recently the Ministry of Health, in their routine press conference, they has told the press that they are going to discuss about the compensation issue of the dairy affected infants. So I think Chinese government is making very positive steps. And because of all those crises that we are facing, we're actually learning from that. And I think this is the most important issue that the whole world can learn from the experience.
I am a bit shocked by this constant mentioning of government spokesmen. I think this is far from adequate. I mean, first of all, I think this is also a very serious political issue. Why does not the Chinese leaders, why do the Chinese leaders not allow the media to play a very important monitoring role and report these cases? This is a very effective mechanism.
Well, let me put that to Zhang Bo. I mean,
I raised the second question. Why don't the Chinese authorities allow the Chinese lawyers to take up the cases and sue the corporations in court? Obviously, the Chinese authorities are still creating a lot of hurdles against such litigation cases.
Zhang Bo, we have seen it again and again. The Chinese government's immediate instinct has been to cover it up rather than allow it to play through.
I think the problem is about the interaction between central government and local government. We need to act in synergy in order to prevent this kind of tragedy from happening. So that when we're considering about the legal issue, I think we have a lot of things to discuss. Maybe we could discuss these kind of situations in other episodes of this program. But I think, just as we mentioned in the first video that is played in this program, we have also know that in China there's kind of legal assistance system set up. But I think that, yes, there might be problems in all these kind of systems set up, but we need to know that progress are made, step by step, and I think that's what is more important in the future.
Alexandra Hanley, I mean, there are problems and there is a price to be paid, but I think we should give the Chinese government the credit for saying that, of course, it doesn't want these things to happen. So the judgment here must be on whether Zhang Bo is correct in saying that we are making progress. Now, from your perspective, is China on a learning curve here, and is it making adequate progress along that curve?
Well, I think Zhang Bo mentioned this idea that there's not, it's very inexact to describe the Chinese government just that way. There's the central government and then there's the local governments, and oftentimes their interests conflict. So the central government clearly has the will, politically and otherwise, to change the way things are done. However, it's the local governments who actually implement those policies, and a lot of local governments are very much invested in, tied to local companies, food production companies included. And so they often have counter incentives that prevent them from fulfilling their duties. So I think that we keep mentioning this idea of it being a political problem. Implementation is consistently the issue in China.
Is that for you the most important element, and that is the implementation of policy?
Well, absolutely. You can have beautiful laws, and if you don't implement them, they don't add up to anything. The ultimate issue is that right now China doesn't have enough people who have the knowledge and skills to actually inspect all of these food production centers. So even if China wanted to implement its laws, it couldn't efficiently, not yet.
Okay, very quickly, let me give the final word to Zhang Bo. Do you think this is going to happen again, very quickly?
I don't think this kind of situation is very easy to solve, but I think, you know, the government and the companies, the industries is definitely going to learn from these experiences and do better in the future.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's a matter of the rule of law and freedom of media.
And there we will have to leave it. Thank you all very much indeed for talking to us today. That's all we have time for this week. My thanks to all of our guests, and from all of us here at 101 East, it's goodbye.